welcome to the Super Gamer Podcast. Welcome to the new Super Gamer Podcast, episode 161. Our guest this week is a game designer, programmer, and writer, creative producer at Acer Interactive, horse game consultant, the authority on horse games, really, the creator of the main quest. We have Alice Ruppert. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. That was a long list. I need to correct one thing. It said programmer. It's actually been a while. I don't think I can call myself a programmer nowadays.
Are you? Does it? I don't think it ever goes away. I think if you've programmed, you're a programmer. But okay.
Maybe. I would. It's been years since I wrote a line of code at work, so I would. That gives me imposter syndrome if I call myself a programmer. Okay. But no, the rest of that is actually things that I do. Yes.
So you've kind of become the horse authority for video games, but you've been taking weekly horse ride lessons since you were 8 years old. You've been gaming most of your life as well. The first horse game you played and really loved was Ferd and Pony, Mein Pferdehof.
Yeah, it does have an English title. It's called My Horse Farm.
Oh, okay.
So I played the German version as a kid, but in English it's My Horse Farm, and I'm not sure if it's the first I played, but it's definitely the one that I loved the most and played the most.
Right, you loved the first one. You didn't like the sequel so much. Have you found a way to play it again? Because I know you said a while back that it wasn't running on Windows 10.
No, but I also haven't tried in a bit. I still probably I could because I have been in touch with the developers of the game, and they actually did send me a version that might work. It didn't initially, but I could spend some more time trying to get it running.
Cool. Was it kind of were you fangirling when you talked to the developers?
Oh yeah, a bit, definitely a bit. But it's also super funny because the developers of 20-year-old horse games aren't really used to being fangirled at for their 20-year-old horse games. And they also, but the guy I talked to was also really just happy to talk to someone who cared about their old work that much. So that was a fun chat. Definitely interesting. My work with the main quest has brought me in touch with a lot of interesting developer stories and circumstances under which games were made.
Right. The main quest, MANE, for those unfamiliar, is a blog, a review site, a news site, all about horses in video games. You give your opinion on what games get right and what they get wrong. And you've kind of become, I keep saying, you become the horse authority in games, and devs are now explicitly saying they're using the main quest for guidance in their game. Is there pressure there? Is it exciting? How does that feel?
I mean, it's amazing, obviously. When one recent example of that was Star Equestrian, which is a mobile horse MMO game. And I talked to developers. They wanted to get some feedback from me shortly before their game's launch, and it was really fun to hear. I was like, okay, so what were your inspirations? What did you look at? What considerations went into design of the game? And they were just like, you wrote a list about what horse games should and shouldn't do, and we tried to do most of those things. So Obviously, they also did a lot of independent game design. It's not like I just tell people what to do. But definitely, that's not the first time that I noticed that developers are really starting to pay attention, and they're trying to avoid the mistakes that I constantly complain about, and they're trying to tackle the things that I say should appear in games more often, and it is amazing. That is so cool. I'm in a really I'm in a hyper specific niche with my reporting and with my my efforts. But by the way, that's also why it's comparatively it's easy to become the authority on something if you pick a small enough niche that you're the only one talking about it. So that's why I'm in charge of all the horse game communities, just because I was the only one, the first one to think of building that stuff up. It does feel pretty amazing that people actually start listening to me and take my advice and are thankful for it. It could also be that they're like, oh, that person constantly talking about this and that, but no, it seems to be genuinely helpful, and that's really nice.
It is a niche, but it's a niche that, the whole reason you made the main quest is because you realized there are lots of people out there who do care about all the mistakes that games make when it comes to horses.
Yeah, absolutely, and like not just that, but also because I believe still and am amassing evidence for the fact that like there's more overlap than people think between generally like people who play video games and people who like horses. Um, and I don't know. I like to point to something like the ongoing success of Star Stable as evidence for that, which is like it's a horse-focused MMORPG for girls aged 8 to 18, and they've been going strong and being like just they've been running a successful game for 12 years now, with like 500,000 monthly active users, which is like that's not just impressive for a niche. That's impressive for an MMORPG, yeah, like the audience exists, and it is bigger than a lot of people give it credit for, and it's, in my opinion, still very much underserved and underexplored by the games industry at large.
You do say in your preview of My Horse Bonded Spirits that we're seeing something of a horse game renaissance at the moment, but that the playing field and who gets to participate has significantly changed. What do you mean by that? Like, what's changed?
Yeah. So maybe first I need to explain, like, when I talk about a horse game renaissance, I need to quickly talk about the sort of the initial boom of horse games, which was in the 2000s. That was when also the aforementioned My Horse Farm came out and was very successful. And it wasn't the only game of that type. There were a couple like Mary King's Riding Star and The Legacy of Rosemont Hill. What the Pippa Fennell series. The thing is, these games were all published under various different names, so if that doesn't ring a bell, you might have played them under a different title. Well, not you specifically, but anyone listening who has played a horse game. So there was a big boom in the mid 2000s of just a handful of horse games got made and were really successful. The market realized that girls who had access to PCs who liked horses were like an audience that could be capitalized upon, and they started making use of that by churning out basically just the same type of game over and over and over, which eventually led to the market burning out a bit, and then that type of game stopped being made again. It's a bit of a simplification, obviously. I'm sure there were lots of other factors for why it rose so quickly and then died so relatively abruptly. But I would definitely speculate that the fact that just the sheer quantity of games that got made in the genre and how little they were distinct from each other, I think that was definitely a big factor. So we had a bit of a drought in horse games between, let's say, 2010 and 2016, 17, something like that, where really almost no games appeared, at least on PC and console. We did have browser games in that time, and we did have mobile games, and the aforementioned Star Stable was also growing in that time, but still it wasn't it was a bit of a drought. And yeah, that's starting to change again. And it's not happening in the exact same way. So like traditional publishers are still very much like playing along and like publishing, like funding and publishing sort of traditional like very small scope horse games with an audience of like very young like young girls, like ages like 6 to 12 or something, as their target audience, and mainly focused on like the retail market. So that's sort of like the traditional branch, which is still it's getting new releases nowadays. Some of them are a bit better than what we used to get. Some of them are a lot worse than what we used to get. I review those, so like if you're interested in details on that, you can check my reviews on the main quest. But yeah, the new thing is, and that's what I meant by who gets to participate has changed. The new thing is that for the first time this year, we're looking at the release of indie horse games, which was interestingly something that hasn't really happened before. I mean, the sort of the rise of indie games is not a new development in the larger games industry by now, but the horse game niche hasn't really caught up to it yet. So it's really interesting that this year with Stride and the Ranch of Rivershine, we'll see the first independently created horse games, and also like horse games that actually have somewhat more professional teams behind them that get released on Steam, that have sort of plans to further engage with their community and keep developing. So they'll both release in early access and be developed further, which is quite a difference from traditionally published retail games, which just get released and then maybe, if you're lucky, patched once or twice, and then the publisher and developer move on. And specifically, what I meant in the article on My Horse Bonded Spirits is that we're also seeing like sort of that style of game. How do I summarize this? Sort of a cheaper, slightly janky attempt at capitalizing on this audience. Obviously, the game's not out yet, so I don't want to talk too negatively about it. But if you read the article, there's a bunch of some reasons for why I'm a bit skeptical about the expected quality of that title in particular.
One thing that comes up quite a bit from you and comes up in your latest your Ghost of Tsushima review is the animation of horses and how that's like pretty much always wrong. And admittedly, like I'm not that into horses. I haven't really thought about it much, but because of the review and interviewing researching for this interview, I kind of started looking into it, and like it's really cool how for every different like speed that a horse is going, like at a walk all its legs move independently, and then at a trot like its diagonal legs are moving in unison, and then in a run all four legs are in the air. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, and it's also what makes it complex. Like, horses have... I mean, all quadrupeds have different gaits. That's what... a gait meaning, like, the order of how feet move, right? So you have the same... You would have the same sort of... same questions and same considerations when animating a cat or a dog or any quadruped animal. But for horses, we know exactly... Like, horses are a bit special because we control, or we can, like, as people who ride them, we can also control which gait they're going at. So it's a bit, I'd say, more people know exactly how a horse moves than people know exactly how a cat or a dog moves. But I don't know. Maybe that's also just my personal bias. I would love to hear anyone's cat or dog analysis in video games. But you're absolutely right. There is specific like footfalls and motions, and games sometimes get those wrong. More often than recently, I see getting the basic basic gaits correctly, but just making like just issues with how the joints move during those gaits. Which is something that a lot of games get wrong, including big AAA games like the aforementioned Ghost of Tsushima.
Right. Well, definitely. Another thing I noticed and like just kind of baffles me is I don't know what it's called, like what looks like their ankle joint, like the way it bends down and springs when they that's a lot of force on a tiny little part of the leg. It amazes me that they're able to do that.
Yeah, that's also sort of. I think that's part of what fascinates me about horse movement as well. It's like when I watch a horse move, like when I don't know, I always loved watching horses move, even as a kid, and I didn't used to think about like why I thought that was beautiful or fascinating or interesting. But nowadays, where I spend so much time trying to explain to people what is wrong about specific animations, I'm also sort of forced to analyze. Okay, so what does make a horse's movement work, and what makes it not work? Not just visually in a game, but also biomechanically in real life. And I do think it's pretty fascinating, and it's also something that like. Not everyone needs to understand the full mechanics of how a horse moves, but I do feel like I don't know, like a lot of the time horse animations are wrong on such a basic level that I'm like, I don't think you need to be a horse expert to get everything right about the motion of a horse, or you don't need to explain every detail of it. But I think if you're an animator, you owe it to the subject you're representing to use reference footage properly and to see what really makes and breaks the the motion, the movement of that animal or creature or person. And I think that's often kind of, unfortunately, that's often missing, or at least not visible in the end result.
I do want to say, as far as my research and seeing how horses move, I did get some of that from your interview with Simone de Rochefort for Polygon. And I also wanted to mention, so a friend of mine, I was very excited to tell him I got this interview because he's really into horses. And he, when I was talking about, I'm super into the movement now, he sent me an article. I didn't realize the first ever film was created because there was a bet between, I think it was a governor and a photographer on how horses move. And the governor was like, well, a horse always has one foot on the ground. And the photographer was like, no, it doesn't. And I will prove it. Yeah. And made the first film. That's so cool.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like the famous Muybridge sequence of photos that show, as you say, a horse in motion. So it's like a series of, 30, 40 pictures that capture the full range of a horse's gallop. And those pictures also prove that there is, in fact, a phase where the horse has all feet off the ground. So where it's actually leaping. What's also interesting is that before those pictures, a lot of art that you see is like just painted images depict horses really weirdly. Like they usually depict them with all 4 feet in the ground, but not in the way that they actually look during the movement. So like it's usually more like they look a bit like rocking horses, where they just have legs in front and legs in the back outstretched for like dramatic effect. Having those pictures was actually what enabled artists to draw horses with more anatomical correctness to capture a moment in the motion of a horse. Because obviously, if a real horse gallops, it's kind of hard to keep track of all the legs if you're not able to pause and look at an individual frame.
It's hilarious to me that you are, one of your main, this is what people get wrong, is something people have been getting wrong for hundreds of years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Literally. We also, there's a lot of bad horse art as well. I'm sending you one on Discord. We have a Discord server emoji of one infamous bad art horse that's just egg-shaped. It's just like, you can draw a horse from the front, right? No, it's an egg.
4 years ago, you did a speech called "All Horse Games Are Bad." How have we? I know we talked about how there's a renaissance in that, but how have we done in the past 4 years? Are all horse games bad?
I still like that talk because it's sort of. It's a bit clickbaity, right? But it is. I think it is growing a bit out of date, but it's not as out of date as one would like it to be. I think horse games are definitely like there's the genre, or like the niche in its entirety is getting better. Lots of games are more games are being made in it. I think a few of the releases we've seen since that time are better than what we used to see. But I still think there's ways to go, and I still think there's a lot of people who would be very interested in a good game about horses and riding that are not yet satisfied. So, we're sort of in an in-between stage now, where nowadays I wouldn't necessarily give a talk called "All Horse Games Are Bad," but I also don't think it really needs to be like completely revised, because I think the essence of it is still very much true. Like there's still lots going on with lots going wrong in the niche, and there's still a big market of underserved people.
And you have your own horse game that recently came out, which we will get to. But before we do, one thing you brought up in that "all horse games are bad" talk, which I think can be applied to games generally, I love it as a point, is if a publisher says, "Oh, there's no market for that kind of game," well, that could just be that none of the games to this point in that genre have been any good. There might be a huge market. It's just you haven't done it very well.
Yeah, but that's also. I mean, I also understand that of course anyone putting money into games needs to have some sort of strategy for getting that money out. And in my opinion, from what I've seen, I believe it's a solid business case. But unfortunately, not everybody believes me when I say that, because, well, obviously I'm biased. But no, I think on the one hand it's understandable. Like game publishers are not known for being the drivers of innovation. On the contrary, game publishers want to make safe bets. They want to make games that they know work and sell. But I think I would hope that the first publisher to actually take a slightly bigger chance and a bigger risk, and if things go well with a competent team and everything, like the first team to get this right is probably going to make a lot of money. And I'm trying to be that person, but who knows? Maybe someone else will get there first.
Along the same lines there, you said in your speech at the Swiss National Museum Games Exhibition that you believe there is a game for everyone, and if someone isn't into games, don't consider themselves a gamer or whatever, that maybe they just haven't played the game for them, and maybe that game isn't even made yet, which I love as a message because it makes me think of my dad, who is, getting older. He's less and less mobile, and he can't really do as much as he used to golf. He can't golf anymore. So I'd love to get him into games, but he's just the kind of guy who's like, no, not for me. Any advice for convincing someone like that to try games?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's no one strategy that will work for everyone, and it's also not something that I don't think we don't need to force people to enjoy games if they can't really get started with the medium. But what I would say, or like what I would try to find out is why is that person uninterested in games? Because it usually, like, oftentimes it kind of boils down to misconceptions about what games are and what they can be. So like if somebody, for example, I mean I've talked to people who are like, when I tell them I make games, they're like, oh, my son would love that. And I'm like, so like with that implication, like, oh, that's something for kids, right? And there's a lot of people have these unspoken assumptions of like games are for kids, games are perhaps not not a medium as interesting or relevant or high quality or artistically valuable as like books, movies, film, whatever. Or people just have a certain image of like what they assume video games to be. Like, for example, maybe someone like your dad thinks, oh no, that sounds way too hectic. I wouldn't be able to keep up. If too much things happen on the screen, I get overwhelmed. Or they think like, well, no, but I can't use a controller. My fingers aren't fast enough. I would struggle with that. Or they think that, well, I'm not interested in games because I don't want to just shoot people digitally or something like that. And all of those assumptions are like they exist for a reason and they're valid, but at the same time, like, there's games that don't fall into those that those concerns don't apply to. Like, you can find non-violent games, you can find slow-paced games, you can find accessible games, you can find games with mature topics, and I don't mean like adult content. I mean just themes and narratives that are interesting for adults and not just for kids. And all sorts of things. So like I would, when trying to get someone into games, I would ask them why they're not into games, and then find them games that don't fall into those notions that they have of what games are, and like show them what games can be instead.
All right, let's get to Horse Tales Emerald Valley Ranch, which released November 2022. You were a creative producer on this project. You actually got the job through the main quest. It's a game by Acer Interactive. The project was already underway when you took over. So
That's right.
When you come in, like, do you have to do a huge overhaul where you're like, no, this is wrong. We're doing it like this?
No, not really. For a few reasons, actually. So on the one hand, I wasn't like the the team at Azer Interactive was aware of my work, and they had that was also one of those experiences where a team told me like, oh yeah, we looked at your article on that and we want to do it differently, something like that. So they did already take some of those things into consideration. And the other question, or like the other matter, of course, was that there wasn't room to come in and just redo everything. Like I entered as, I mean, as a creative producer, I do have some creative control, but that didn't mean I could just like throw the project scope out of the window and like redo everything or anything. So I joined the project, and the challenge in like joining that project is mostly like, okay, how do we get this finished? How do we deliver everything that is already planned to be in the game? So I didn't. It wasn't really. The time that I joined the project was not the time to to make drastic changes to scope and feature lists. It was mostly executing plans that were already laid. But of course, with a few things, like there were definitely a handful of like horsey details. Where like, okay, we need to change that. That needs to be done before we release. I wish there was more time and resources for that sort of thing. But there were definitely horsey details where I was able to say like, hey, I actually think this is wrong and we need to change it. And that was cool. There was definitely a bit of room for that.
How do you sort of like win over the team when you're the newcomer and suddenly it's like, hey, now I'm going to be leading things a little bit? Like, how do you get them on your side?
That wasn't really a problem I had to deal with. The team was very lovely. They were all familiar with my work. They were really, when I joined the team, everybody was really excited. Like at least at Azer Interactive, like the team itself that worked on the project already was. Everyone was super welcoming, and they were also very much like they knew that I had that they were aware of why I got there and why I joined, and like my background at the main quest. So like I didn't really need to convince anyone. I think what was more the case was just that, well, it's not like I walked in there and was like, okay, this is what we do now. Like, no, it consisted of a lot of learning, a lot of the team teaching me processes, a lot of team giving me more details about how the game was supposed to work. Like, I think if I'd walked in there and tried to just like lead in the sense of like, totally gripping the steering wheel and going somewhere else, like that would not have resulted in a finished product. That wasn't really how that could have went down. So like what happened instead was that the team was really lovely. They explained to me how the game worked. They continued their work as they always had, and I was just the new person to lead meetings and to help everyone plan and to sort of do the day-to-day project management for a long time at least, because obviously it's like the producer job is also something that takes quite a bit of I think you're usually assume something like six months of like onboarding time until you really know what you're doing, and that was definitely a bit faster for me because I knew the project already and the subject matter, and so like some stuff was clear to me from the start. But I would also say that like it definitely wasn't the case of like just coming in and telling everyone what to do differently.
What makes Horsetails Emerald Valley Ranch, as you say in an interview with Eric Bartelson for Premortem Games, what makes it the best horse game this market niche has seen in a lifetime?
There are definitely lots of people who would disagree with that after release. So somebody is gonna mock me relentlessly for that statement. The game actually released to mixed reviews on Steam, so like obviously some people disagree. I think what makes it really new and fresh, and what made me to say something like I think it's the best thing, it's that it's just a bigger project and product than what we've had in the niche in a long time. From things like the fact that it's the only game among its direct competitors that actually uses custom horse animation instead of using a faulty asset pack. And it's the only game so far that's been using that's actually had some sort of personality differences between different horses and have stats. Stats are a bit more common, but just trying to portray horses as individual creatures instead of just horse equals horse. And so those are the things that, those are some of the things that I think make Horse Tales really unique. And there's definitely other upcoming games that plan to have some of those features, and I'm really curious to see how those turn out as well. But I would say that a lot of those features that people often ask for, which is, like I mentioned, good animation, horse personalities, and the breeding system is also something that's another can of worms that I don't want to get into, but basically just how horse breeding works in video games. You often can breed horses, but they rarely reflect the actual complexities of horse color genetics, which is a rabbit hole that a lot of horse people like getting into because it's fun and challenging. And Horse Tales actually has that, and just also that there's the size of the world to explore, the fact that you can build your own ranch up. It's just build your own horse stable, so to say. That's a lot of things that I think the game is bringing new to the table, or is bringing in a different scope and in a different way than the competition so far.
I know you said earlier that you haven't really touched code in quite a while, but what about, you had a project you put on hold in 2021. Have you looked at, or are you still planning on working on Horse Game at all? That was a personal project of yours. It's completely on hold. So I was just working on a little prototype that started before I launched the main quest, actually. So that for a while it was my main effort in a horse game topic, so to say. But I realized that in launching the main quest, that I was sort of, I don't know, I ended up focusing on writing about games instead of working on that prototype, because I also realized that this work mode, doing weekends and evenings of game development, it doesn't really work out for me. That style of solo dev, just working all by yourself and making really slow progress. Maybe I could have continued that. Maybe I would have found a way to continue that. But I don't know. It just made more sense to focus on writing about games, and sort of making a difference in that way. And as we see, that has in the end led me to where I am now, which is as you've said, creative producer on new horse games. What's the funniest horse name you've ever heard?
Oh God, I don't know. It's a cliche answer, but one of the funny ones is Patu, or potatoes, which is a racehorse that was actually called that. I think the myth is that somebody told them this horse is called Potatoes, but the person writing that down, I think they were making a joke and just wrote pot and then 8 O's. Okay. So it's just it's just got 8 O's, and it's just it looks like Patu, and I don't know. And that was a racehorse in the, I don't know, sometime in the early 20th century. I think that's pretty hilarious. But everyone who's ever looked into racehorse names will be familiar with that story and might not think it's so funny anymore. I don't know.
I don't know. Racehorse names, it's such a funny convention to me. They are totally bizarre.
I think they need to be unique. I'm not super familiar with the whole that part of horse sports, but I think they need to be unique, and that's why they. I think you're not allowed to register a horse as under a name that someone that there's already been a horse under, and so that's why they get really creative with their names, as far as I know.
Did you get any funny looks when you wore Assassin's Creed cosplay in Rome?
Well, you went deep into my social media backlog to ask relevant questions. I don't know. Yeah, I probably did. I think I did. Definitely got some looks, but and I don't remember any I don't remember anything weird. I don't know. We just we were going on vacation in Rome anyway, and I just finished my Assassin's Creed cosplay a few days before, and since one of the Assassin's Creed games had taken place in Rome, I was like, well, there's space in my suitcase. guess we're doing a picture day, and we did. It was fun.
How many horse jigsaw puzzles do you own?
Oh God, I would need to count. Damn, I feel very seen by these questions. It's like you figured me out. I think it's about 3.
Well, that's not bad.
I don't usually go for horses. I probably in and around in my apartment and in my basement right now. I have about 20 to 30 1,500 piece jigsaw puzzles, and I don't think there's many horses on them, but definitely a few. So I don't know, probably it's between 2 and 5.
Before I get to the last question, I do have to come clean about something. I have put 160 hours into Elden Ring. I have never fed Torrent a raisin. I'm not surprised by this. I think I told my boyfriend played it too, and he also was like, "What? You can feed the horse?" And I was just like, "Yeah, you can. That way you don't waste bottles on summoning him." So I do think it's something that makes sense mechanically, and not just because I think it's cute. But I think you're far from the only player who missed that is an option. Okay, last thing. You used to work at Air Console, and they had a strong focus on local multiplayer games. Mm-hmm. What kind of potential is there for local multiplayer horse games?
Yeah, that's something that I also thought about a few times, because I would have loved an excuse to make a horse game for Air Console. I haven't found the one big game idea for that to so to say, because I think the Air Console experience is very, very focused on sort of the party game setting, group of people, whereas of course the horse game niche is very focused on the specific people who enjoy this one thing. And could you make a local multiplayer Air Console smartphone controlled horse game? Yes, definitely, but I was never able to make that business case convincingly, because I think horse girls don't have enough local multiplayer gaming parties, as far as I know, or I'm sure some of them have those, but I don't know. I was never confidently able to argue that is an experience that we should invest time and money into at Air Console. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just maybe I'm underestimating that potential myself.
All right. Well, the game that people can check out and should check out: Horse Tales, Emerald Valley Ranch. Websites you can check out our guest at aliceruppert.ch. That's ALICERUPPERT.ch. TheMainQuest.com. MANE. Maine. Alice Ruppert, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.